Dan Quinn is no longer the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. He is taking the Commanders' head coaching job. Many of us thought, Seattle's the spot. Seattle ends up hiring Mike McDonald. When Ben Johnson, though, left the search involving the Commanders, it became kind of thin for them, and they have now settled on Dan Quinn as their next head coach. When Cowboys news happens, we have you covered. We're live right now, of course, breaking down this news. It'll be available on demand, of course, too. So do not miss out. Hit that sub button right now for more free Dallas Cowboys YouTube videos multiple times per day. Dan Quinn replacements will be available later this afternoon. Again, Quinn is leaving to take the Commanders' head coaching job. I know some Commanders fans are maybe not the happiest about that particular move, but so be it. This is Quinn's second head coaching job. He was the Falcons head coach from 2015 to 2020. Had a losing record without Shanahan as his offensive coordinator. That'll be a big hire for him in Washington. He had been the Cowboys defensive coordinator since 2021. Was an instant massive upgrade over Mike Nolan. And the raw numbers are very impressive of Quinn as a defensive coordinator. From an EPA per play standpoint, takes out the offensive stuff. It's just what your defense, the health of your defense, so to speak. He's fourth in EPA per play this season, second in EPA per play in 2022, third in 2021. Among all defenses in that time frame, actually first, because other defenses went up and down in those years. However, as we will get into, there were some underlying concerns, highlighted most of all by the disaster performance against the Packers in the playoffs, in which they allowed 6 of 7 scoring drives to begin the game. They couldn't get a stop on defense. The Quinn issues against the Shanahan-McVay-style offenses remain a massive problem. Motion still trick this team constantly. But the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Of course, I know how most of you are, and I know many of you wanted Dan Quinn gone, and hey, we all wanted change. At least this is something resembling change. So are you mad that Dan Quinn has left as the Cowboys defensive coordinator? Y for yes, N for no. This will be the pinned comment on today's video. If the ad comes on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there. Y for yes, N for no. Now I expect, plenty of no votes in the comment section at the pinned comment there. Things fell apart down the stretch for Dan Quinn. There's no way to ignore it. This was not an elite defense over the last, I would argue, year and a half. When the game script was in their favor, it absolutely was. But when it was a closer game, when teams could run the ball on them, when they fell behind, they didn't perform very well. Same metrics, EPA per play and success rate. After week 13 this season, they were 27th in overall expected points added. They were 28th in pass defense. They were 16th in run defense. They were actually worse as a pass defense than they were as a run defense. The success rates were all pretty high, which is indicative of, hey, the sacks and the turnovers and the more inconsistent stuff happened and bailed them out because teams moved the ball on them successfully. The reality was, down the stretch this year, this Cowboys defense was closer to being a flat-out bad defense than it was to even being an average defense. And the big factor was this Cowboys team has allowed a lot of points against good offenses, which is not ideal. Last year and a half, and again, we'll use EPA for offense, points scored. So the Cowboys offense gets some blame here, make no mistake about it. But, top 11-ish offenses, right? Green Bay last year, 31 points. Jaguars last year, 40. Eagles last year, 34. Niners last year, 19. Then 42 this year. The Rams, 9th. They only allowed 20. Eagles, 28 and 13. Two different stages of those games there. Seattle was 35. The Bills were 33. There should be another graphic there for those. Should be more games involved here on the listicles. The Dolphins, they had some issues with there. The Packers, of course, down the stretch this season had massive, massive issues in that area. This Cowboys, there should be a third listicle, Chris. They had massive issues stopping opposing teams down the stretch this year. There it is, perfect. 22 against the Dolphins, 20 against the Lions, then 48 against the Packers. On average, 29.6 points per game. Does your offense get some blame there? Yes, they do. Across the board, that's bad. It's a really bad defensive performance. It's even worse than your offense had against the so-called good defenses. That's concerning. More on Dan Quinn and the fallout here, but first, today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That link again, folks, will be in the comments and the description of today's show. Prize Picks, to put it simply, is daily fantasy made easy. You're picking 2 to 6 player stat projections, more than, less than, and watching those figures come in and hopefully winning as well. I like to do the flex play. The flex play means you can get one wrong and still win your Prize Picks late. Obviously, lower returns, but hey, that's worthwhile to give yourself some cushion. Here is one of my Super Bowl prize picks. This one is the flex play, by the way. More than Christian McCaffrey, 18.5 at carries. More than Travis Kelce, 70.5 receiving yards. And less than Rashee Rice, 6.5 catches. I would guess that Charvarius Ward, Cowboys legend, matches up pretty well against him. You can go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Links in the comments and the description of today's show. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS. Now, one of the problems here that you will face with Dan Quinn leaving is that this will not be a very attractive job. I do not believe that. I hope I am wrong. The talent is not the issue. It's not. The job status of your head coach is. If you have one job offer that has, hey, it's a new head coach or a good head coach, and I get my normal length contract, and I'm not in danger of, if I don't make it to the NFC Championship game, my staff is fired, or if I have to do it to keep my job. It's the lame duck status for the hottest seat in America. I do not believe this head coaching or this defensive coordinator spot is going to be a highly coveted job, because unless you make the NFC Championship game, you're probably going to get fired because there's going to be a new head coach. He's probably going to want his own defensive coordinator. That's not a lot of job security. It's not. And if you're not a top 5 defense, we're all going to say you were worse than Dan Quinn. That's concerning. So what is your one-word reaction to losing Dan Quinn? Sound off for me in the comments section right now. My one word is inevitable. Certainly felt like that going into the playoff game. Didn't feel quite as much like that afterwards. But as soon as you had the year 1 success with Dan Quinn, we knew he wasn't going to be here forever. And had Broncos ownership not come flying in and said, no, we want an offensive guy, you probably would have lost him after 1 season. Now, the Cowboys have had internal options. However, things are a little bit different now than what I thought they would be before this hire went down. The top Cowboys defensive staff is Joe Witt, Al Harris, Adden Dirty. There is a big dichotomy right now between what national media is, reporting and what local media is, reporting at this time. National media makes it sound like, you know what, Joe Witt, he's not gonna be in Dallas. He's gonna take the Commanders' defensive coordinator job. That's a big difference. Local media says he's the favorite. Al Harris has said he'd love to follow Dan Quinn. Adden Dirty is a Dan Quinn guy. I'm not sure what their contract statuses are, but if they are under contract, the Cowboys can block all but one of those guys from joining Dan Quinn. And that would be the guy out of contract, can take the job, or the defensive coordinator role would be an upgrade. You can't block that. So I would wager a massive sum of money one of those guys is going to join Dan Quinn at minimum. Maybe multiple if the Cowboys say, yes, you can go. Scott McClurley is not going anywhere. He is a Mike McCarthy guy through and through. Other assistants here, Cannon Matthews, Sharif Floyd, Eric Simonelli, Darian Thompson, Pete Onigan. Those are all lesser staff members, so maybe one of them jumped ship. And if you're an assistant guy, normally teams like, yes, you can go. That's fine. You're getting a promotion. We're not going to block you from that. But I don't think this is going to be people are going to want to join Dan Quinn. This defensive staff likes him. I don't know how many guys who end up losing. And I had felt pretty good about it. Joe Witt's your next DC. Now, not so sure. So who do you want as the Cowboys' next defensive coordinator? Sound off for me in the comments section right now. Now, I would say that Joe Witt is the top name to keep an eye on here. This has been the local media said for a while now, and I've heard it too. Witt is the top internal guy. He's also ahead of Al Harris on this coaching staff. Like he ranks higher, and he's done this longer, and he's been more the tactician guy than Harris has been. If we're going to give Harris all the credit for this DB's room, cool. We're also just ignoring Joe Witt's impact, which I think is kind of weird. So monitor what happens with Joe Witt. If he gets the job, fine. If he doesn't, I don't know where they go. So Dan Quinn is done as the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. He is off to the Washington Commanders. It's a big move for Dallas. We will keep an eye on what happens here. But I am very curious to see how this team replaces him. We will have that video for you on the channel, so make sure you are subscribed.